Welcome back to Project Healthy Schools. This is Lesson 9. We're going to be talking about facts on fat. But before we get going with Lesson 9, of course, let's talk about what we talked about in Lesson 8. Well, in Lesson 8, we talked about advertising and we talked about the strategies that companies take to try to get us to use their products. Now, sometimes that's okay, but sometimes those products aren't good for us. And we talked about limiting the amount of screen time that we have each day to try to limit some of that influence that those advertisements can have on us. We also created an ad about something healthy. You created an ad about healthy choices based on one of the 5 PHS goals. All we work to understand how advertisements can influence our food and beverage choices. So as I mentioned, we're going to be talking about fat today, and a lot of times fat gets a bad name. But are all fats bad for us? Well, the answer is absolutely not. There are some fats that are very important to our body. Many of the fats that we eat are healthy. Can you think of any foods that are high in healthy fat? Well, things like nuts, avocados, olives, all contain the healthy kind of fat that helps support our body. So why do we need fat in our body? Well, as we talked about in a previous lesson, fat is one of our macronutrients, so it is important that our body gets some fat. But why? Well, healthy fats help our bodies to function properly by absorbing and transporting vitamins A, D, E, and K. Healthy fats keep our hair and skin looking great. Everybody likes that. Some healthy fats might even protect us from heart disease. And we need a healthy amount of fat in our body to cushion our organs, to insulate our body, and to even provide some energy. So you've probably heard of the terms saturated fat and unsaturated fat, but who knows the difference? Well, here are the simple definitions. Unsaturated fat is a healthy fat that helps the body absorb and transport vitamins, protect organs and cells, and lower bad cholesterol. So examples of those things are like we talked about earlier: nuts, seeds, olives, avocados, peanut butter. These are the fats that are healthy to our body. But what about saturated fat? What is saturated fat? It does things like increase our bad levels of cholesterol, and over time can lead to even worse things like heart attacks and strokes. Foods that are high in saturated fat are the foods that we want to try to limit. They include animal fats like hamburgers and steaks, butter, fried food, fast food, and all of those foods that we sometimes eat too much of. So it's important that we limit the amount of saturated fat we bring into our body. Now, I mentioned the word cholesterol earlier, but it's important that we know the definition of cholesterol. Who knows what cholesterol really is? Cholesterol is a fatty substance that is necessary in our body. So once again, it sounds like a bad word. We hear it oftentimes associated with negative things, but it's not always negative. There's good cholesterol as well. There are 2 types of cholesterol. There's HDL. HDL is the cholesterol that's good for our body. It helps prevent us from getting heart disease, and it also helps take down the levels of bad cholesterol. Now, bad cholesterol is called LDL, and too much of this increases our risk of heart disease. Let's talk about another vocab word, the word sodium. I'm guessing you know what the word sodium means. If you don't, sodium is another word for salt. It's a mineral that's often added to food for flavor and as a preservative. Now, the body does need some sodium to function properly. It's an important micronutrient, but most of our diets are filled with too much sodium, so we don't need to worry about getting extra sodium. We usually get more than enough in our diet. In fact, we even want to watch out for how much we're eating. Take a look at this model to show eating too much saturated fat and sodium can hurt our body. So the inside of our arteries are smooth and plaque-free at birth. The smooth and delicate lining can be damaged by high cholesterol, smoking, high blood pressure, or diabetes. Now, an artery is a hollow tube that carries oxygenated blood from the heart to the body. Now, the word plaque in this instance is defined by a fatty deposit that develops over time inside the artery walls that can cause health problems. So taking a look at this diagram, you can see that over time, if that plaque buildup continues to accumulate, we're going to have a problem. Damage, the artery wall is no longer smooth, and bad cholesterol from our diets circulating our blood can get in. Now, eventually, as you're an adult, you're going to develop more and more plaque in these arteries, but you can prevent how much plaque builds up in those arteries by making healthy choices, in particular in our diets, and limiting the amount of fat and sodium that we consume. Now, in the worst case scenario, the plaque fills up so full that it actually blocks an artery, and that's when we run into really bad things like heart attacks and strokes. If you think of your artery kind of like a drinking straw, if we were drinking through a straw and we kinked the straw, suddenly we're not able to get the fluid out through the tube. It's exactly the same thing. If our artery becomes clogged, the heart can no longer get the blood to the important parts of our body, and this can cause a major problem. It's important to note that it's not just our eating habits that can contribute to heart disease. So today we're going to be focusing especially on our food choices, and in particular the amount of saturated fat that we're bringing into our body. Now we're going to take a close look at some fast food items and some menus, and we're going to work to make better choices about the decisions we make regarding those kinds of foods.